Brian Angus here along with Glenn Allen. Absolutely delighted to be with you wherever you're watching us from this morning. It is Tuesday, November the 27th, and we got lots and lots to show you and talk to you about this morning. Obviously, today's big news here in Toronto is the Grey Cup Parade, and it kicks off at 11:30 this morning. Damn it, there hasn't been a parade in this town for way too long, and we've got lots of headlines, lots to talk about. The NFL game last night, the NBA coming up, TV ratings, some news out of Blue Jays camp, some interviews with Ricky Ray, some things that the Argos had to say, and of course all the story out of the NBA. But we start the whole show off on a very high note. I'm absolutely delighted to bring on a guy who I respect tremendously. He's been with the Toronto Blue Jays since 2002, and now he's the third base coach of the Boston Red Sox. Number 55 on his shirt. And in your program, number one in your heart, Brian Butterfield joins us from Maine this morning. Hi, Butter.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Glenn. How you guys doing?
Very well, thank you.
Doing very, very well, Butter. Now, listen, I got good news and bad news for the fans out there. The bad news is that Brian is gone and will be the third base coach for the Boston Red Sox. The good news, Butter, is, and I'm going to do this live on air to see if we can't change anything. There is still one spot left in the Blue Jays coaching rotation.
Well, you know what, Brian? You're just like all the other people in that city. Just unbelievable people. I've had 11 years of. I can't think of a better scenario than what I've experienced. My wife and my entire family being in Toronto. Just the greatest city in the world, and I've developed some of the finest relationships that I will never forget. And I've had an opportunity and been blessed to work with some outstanding players and coaches.
The fact of the matter is, Butter, I know you well enough to know, and this is where we're going to start with this interview, is that this was a very, very difficult decision for you to make. And I know that you are hoping to become the next manager of the Blue Jays, and I know that you and Alex get along very well, and I trust Beastie and I trust Alex. What was the bottom line there that you didn't get the job?
Well, I think, there's times in life where you got to make a decision. As a husband and a father and a grandfather and a son, there was a point midway through October. We were two and a half weeks removed from the last regular season game. And in my conversation with Alex, there was no guarantee that any of us would be brought back to the big league level in any capacity. So there was a lot of, just because of the nature of the situation, a decision had to be made. And after my conversation with Alex, it was soon after that John Farrell called and offered me the third base coaching job with the Red Sox. So, having that responsibility, I took it. It's back home. But during that time, the unfortunate thing about making decisions sometimes is you don't have that crystal ball. You don't know who's going to be in place when the final decisions are made. And but you can't look back. As a man, you make a decision. You can't look back. I'm happy with the decision. An hour and a half from my home. The family is close. I grew up in this region watching the Red Sox. So it's a great opportunity and a new chapter for me.
Brian, let me ask you about last year. In your heart of hearts, if without all those injuries, especially to the pitching staff, in your heart of hearts, what do you think the Jays, with a healthy squad, could have done last year?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I really think that for 3 or 4 months, we were the talk of the town. We were right there in the hunt for a wild card spot right into the All-Star break, and then injuries, and then the infusion of youth and some other factors led to us just having a poor August. I think we were 10 games under 500 in August, and that 1 month really hurt us. But prior to that, we played good baseball, and I think that, coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's tough to speculate what would have happened, but I was proud of the players and the way they played, and I was proud of the coaching staff, the way they coached. It was a good coaching staff to be on, and a lot of good people around.
Must have been a difficult decision for Alex Anthopoulos and you when you sat down and talked about it, but I'm assuming the reason at the end of the day that he would have said to you, please come back and be our third base coach, we're not appointing you as the manager, is because he really wanted to go with someone with some experience.
Without a doubt. I think that was the final thing that, Alex, that was a very difficult decision for Alex to make, and I really hold him in high regard. I think he's one of the most passionate, fine baseball men that I know. And they made a great decision in hiring John Gibbons, and I consider John Gibbons one of my best friends in baseball. So, as much as you want to become the manager, that takes away a lot of the sting, because I know that they hired a great man. Gibby's a fantastic baseball man and an even better man and a great guy to work for, and I can see that he's hiring a top-notch staff. So there were some tough decisions that had to be made, and Alex is well on his way to being extremely successful, and he's pointing that organization north.
Right. I want to just take a step ahead from my last question. As you sit back and look at the Jays and their potential from last year, and look at the deals and some of the moves that Alex has made, and again, it's kind of a crystal ball thing because they haven't played a game yet. But with those moves in the players that are in the system, you know them. What are your thoughts of the Jays moving forward into next year with the moves that have been made?
I think they have a chance to be very successful, but like every other club in baseball, regardless of what you do in the winter, regardless of the people that you put together, they have a collection of outstanding individuals. But it's important, as you look at the Toronto Argonauts, I think that Jim Barker and Scott Milanovic did an unbelievable job at putting those individuals together and forming a team. And I think it's so different at the big league level. You can have some good individuals, but you've got to bring that team together, and they've got to play together, and there has to be cohesiveness, and there has to be guys that play selfless, and it's got to be about us rather than me. So it's all this hot stove banquet talk is very difficult to gauge, because it's not until the first starts flying that you know whether you're going to have a club or not.
Brian, out of all the coaching positions that are available on a major league ball club, bullpen, first base, third base, bench boss, all the rest of it, why do you like coaching third base the best?
I love the challenge, Brian. I feel like I'm still competing again. It's the players every night. They put their neck on the line, and they have a chance to be embarrassed on a nightly basis. It's a very challenging game, and of all the coaches, the third base coaches under the microscope also have well-laid plans before the ball is put in play, but your eyes and brain may tell you something different. So you have a chance to make a decision that can be right or wrong. So that challenge and being out there and having your palms sweaty, I really love to do. So the other positions are great, especially if it's wearing a big league uniform, and that's another thing. I've never taken that for granted. I just appreciate it so much to be able to put on that Toronto Blue Jay uniform for 11 years, and now I'm looking forward to wearing that Boston Red Sox uniform.
For our viewers out there, Butter, when somebody looks at the manager, they know he's in charge. Is there a hierarchy as far as the bench coaches go as to an order of, well, like I said, a hierarchy? Is there an order at all as to most important, or if somebody is demoted, say, as a, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but there are some people who look at it and say, I'm a bench boss, but now I'm being moved, say, up the ranks to a third base coach. Is that how it goes, or is everybody even?
I think, honestly, good question. I think everybody's even. I think that as a coach, you have a big responsibility. The name of the game is respect. Hopefully you learn that when you're under somebody's roof as a young man or woman. Respect is such a critical thing, and we all have great responsibilities, whether we're on the bench or third base coach or first base coach. We have our groups that we handle. As a third base coach last year, I was in charge of the base running and working with the infielders, and it was my responsibility to try to teach these guys or help them to learn the meaning of respect and playing the game right and doing things right. So it's everybody involved, not only coaches, but also the veteran players have a big responsibility. It's not just hitting home runs or striking people out. It's say the right thing, do the right thing, play the right way, give respect to your teammates, give respect to umpires. There's so much that encompasses respect that I think everybody, coaches, managers, veteran players, are all involved.
Brian, what challenges, I should say, come your way now as you go out there and coach third base in Fenway Park?
Well, Fenway's very interesting. The one benefit is that we play a number of games there over the last 10 years in Fenway, so I'm familiar with the ballpark. I think the biggest thing is just getting to know the base runners. It's a new organization. On the other side, you get an idea of the guys on their roster that can run or maybe not be as quick or instinctive on the bases, but that becomes a gradual thing that you learn during spring training as you get to know your personnel.
Again, from a viewer's point of view, Brian, there's a lot of us have coached different levels of baseball, and I work a lot with 11, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and the little things like if you're on first, second, whatever line drive, make sure it gets through before you take off, and the little things like this and that. But for the people watching the games in a runner when he make bonehead plays on the base paths. Number one, why does it happen? And we all know why, but just from a viewer's point of view when they're yelling at their TV, what do you say to them? How do you talk to them as major leaguers when that they already know that they've made a mistake, but how do you approach a major league ball player in those regards?
Well, repetition is important. I think the more that players, and we dealt with a lot of young players at our level. We had a lot of young players actually learning at the big league level where they weren't able to get those mistakes out of the way in the minor leagues. So it's reaffirming. And I think that as you see young players play, the more reps they get, the better they get. The game slows down for them. Their heart rate slows down. But one of the things that we've continually talked about is, and that being John Farrell and Luis Rivera and Torey Lovello, the thing that we have continually talked about, we would rather take a young guy that is ultra-aggressive and pull the reins on him rather than get that young guy and have to push him to tell him to, push it. That's difficult to do. We would much rather take that young guy and pull the reins, and those repetitions will teach him when to slow down a little bit. So there's a fine line. But one of the biggest things when you're talking about base running, it's important that you coach it up right, because as soon as you jump a guy or making an aggressive mistake, there's a possibility that you may turn him into a station-to-station base runner. So you got to keep applauding. Third base coaches and base runners will make mistakes once that ball is put in play. Every team in the league experiences that. But you've just got to keep pushing forward and understand the situation. I think that there's a lot of guys on that Toronto Blue Jay roster that had 162 games under their belt. They will be much better this year, having gone through that learning process.
Your New England Patriots are 8-3 right now.
I knew that was coming up.
I would have brought it up if they were 3-8, but they rarely are. 8-3 again, rounding into shape, looking like one of the premier teams in the league again. What do you think? What do you think of your side this year?
Well, I love that organization. I love the way they go about their work. One of the things that they're experiencing over the last 2 years is they have a very young defense, and hopefully they're making strides. Sometimes they're a little frustrating to watch right now just because of the chunks of yardage they give up, but they've got Coach Belichick and they've got Tom Brady and they've got also some other outstanding players. But when you see Coach Belichick and Brady go to the podium, you know that you're in good hands just by what they say and what they do.
An awful lot of 5-6 and 4-7. Glenn and I, talk about this every day. And your division with Miami and the Jets and Buffalo, sad sack bunch of teams. But there seems to be a lot of that in the league this year, Brian. There's guys at the top of each division between yourselves and Baltimore and Houston at 10-1 and Denver at 8-3. But it's a hell of a lot more teams at 4-7 and 5-6. Is that just a bad cycle or is that just parity?
Parity, and it's a little bit unusual that, you're right. There's a couple teams that are Houston's the only team at the 10-1 mark, and you have New England at 8-3. There are only probably less than a handful of top-notch clubs as we approach the playoffs. Yeah. But Houston's a club that's ripe for the picking, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let me ask. I just want to go back to baseball for a second. You've been at third base for a long time. And I want to take you back to the wild card game between the St. Louis Cardinals and the Atlanta Braves. And this is, I'm sorry, not the wild card game. Yeah,
that's all right. Where are you going with this? That's interesting.
Well, it goes back to the Infield Fly rule. You remember when
you're talking about.
the game was delayed for 20 minutes while Atlanta fans threw things on the field. But Brian, you remember what I'm talking about here when the ball was hit up into short
deep
left field and or deep short, and it was a late call on the infield fly rule. And just your experience at third base and your experience in baseball, in your opinion, was that the right call? And have you seen a ball go that deep into left field called an infield fly?
No, I don't think I have, and that was unfortunate. And the umpires have a tough duty too, just because you can have all the best intentions, but once that ball is put in play, you have a split second where you've got to make a decision. So I think that if he had to do that one over, he would have let it slide. But because the shortstop and all the guys that were approaching the ball, nobody really had a clear-cut shot at it. So just like the base runners and the third base coach, the umpires, sometimes they have to make a split-second decision. If he had that one back, he would have just let it go.
55 open in the Boston Red Sox roster?
My son was asking me that the other day, and we looked at the program, and Ryan Kalish, a young, promising outfielder, wears 55. And I've always felt like the players they're the reason that I even have.
Come on, Butter, give him some bling or something, and you'll get it.
Well, I'm going to a little function on Saturday, kind of a fan gathering at Fenway Park, and Ryan Kalish will be there, and I might just approach him and tell him that he needs to probably wear a lower number, and he's been hurt a couple of years with that current number that he's.
Yeah. Bad luck for him, bad karma. Best if he got rid of it.
Or if you just show up with a Red Sox jersey with 55 and Butterfield on it, you might get the drift.
I'd be in trouble.
Butter, listen, my friend, it's 7:20, and we thank you very, very much. And personally, it's been way too long since we spoke. I will tell, you're not saying this, I'm going to say it. I know that you dearly wanted to manage this team this year. I know that you respect the decision that Alex Anthopoulos made. It's tough when you're a member of the media. You're supposed to be impartial, but you get to be close to people, and I feel that way with you over all these years, and it's all about respect for you, I know, and I have tons for you. This place will not be the same without you. John Gibbons was on with us, another guy who I respect the hell out of, and he said you're the best coach in the business. So you know that not only he, but everyone else around here feels that it's going to be great big shoes for the new third base coach to fill for the Jays. I wish you all the best of luck. I hope I can keep touch with you throughout the year, and we'll miss you, pal.
Thank you so much, fellas. I left Toronto, and I will say this also. Luis Rivera is another good friend of mine. He's going to be the third base coach. He's outstanding. He hasn't coached third base at the big leagues, but he's a confident guy. He's tough, so he's not going to be afraid over there. So I think you got a chance to have a great one over there.
Once the playoffs come around in the NFL, maybe I'll call you again, and we can talk about how well your Patriots are doing.
Thanks.
Take care, Butter.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.